Wow. Just wow. Hey, I'm Amy and welcome back, and today I will be checking probably one of the saddest movies I've ever watched on the 1001 movie challenge list so far, Schindler's List. There is a lot I have to talk about with this movie, but before I get started, if you do not know what the 1001 movie challenge or 1001 movie checklist is, it is basically a challenge I've given myself to check off every single movie from the 1001 movies you must see before you die book. So far, I have checked 162 films off the list. If you want to check out my video talking a little bit more about this challenge, or just see a playlist of every movie I have watched in this series so far, you can check them out up there. I'm also an Amazon affiliate, so if you'd like to start the challenge for yourself, purchase the movie I'm talking about today, or get the movie I'm going to be talking about next time, you can check the links in the description. And if you purchase anything from those links, I will get a little bit of a kickback, which will help make this channel even better. As always, let's get started with a short summary. A greedy German businessman uses his fortune to save his Jewish workforce after witnessing their persecution in German-occupied Poland during World War II. Like I said at the beginning, there is so much to talk about with this movie. I don't even know where to begin. It is so emotional, and I'm not usually one to enjoy emotional movies or sad movies, movies that I know are gonna make me cry. I tend to avoid them because crying is just not really one of my favorite things to do. I think I did it a little bit too much as a child because I was very picky and I wanted my way all the time. So I just, cried a lot. But I think the reason why I avoided watching this movie for so long, because for some reason we didn't talk about it in film school, or we talked a little bit about it but we never watched it or really did much with this movie when I was in film school. The reason I probably avoided it for so long was because it's so emotional. And yes, I do have it on VHS. I've had it for probably 6 years on VHS and never watched it. I got it from a job I did a while back and I just never watched it. But I just was like, it's the 25th anniversary coming up in February, and what initially had started this ball rolling was the fact that it was going to be playing at an AMC theater. But then when it came time to go see it in the AMC theater, I refunded my ticket because I was just too tired to actually go to the theater and watch it. So I just came home and I watched it on Netflix instead. But it is just such an emotional and powerful movie in so many more ways than just the surface story of the movie. Like, what you would think of as being emotional in this movie is the story part of it. But there are so many more layers to this, which is probably what I'll be focusing mainly on in this video, is the many different layers that Steven Spielberg puts into this film that makes it so much more emotional and powerful. So of course, first up, I want to talk about the story, because at surface level, this is the most powerfully moving part, and one of the reasons why a lot of people are moved by this film, and maybe the only reason that they think they're moved by this film is because of this overarching story throughout, because it is basically about the persecution of Jews in Poland during World War II. The Holocaust and everything that has to do with World War II and the persecution of Jews and other races by the Germans and the Nazis is a lot of just, it's so horrible, it's just insane. That is really the core reason why this movie is so emotional and why people probably think it is the most emotional for them. But there's so many more layers that Steven Spielberg puts in, like I said, that I'll talk about in a second. But I want to focus a little bit on the German persecution and the way it is portrayed in this movie. It is so heartbreaking and hard to watch. There you see the kills up close and in person. I'm not going to show any clips because even though it needs to be seen, it's really tough to watch, and I don't want to put you guys through that. If you want to see it, definitely check out Schindler's List. It is on Netflix. It is 3 hours and 15 minutes long, but this is just, it is definitely a movie worth checking out. I'm not going to put them on here, mostly because the fact that YouTube will probably ding me for it, but it's just, oh my god, the kills are just, it's so tough to watch, but at the same time, I was so engrossed by it. It's just like, I could not take my eyes off it. Not like in that way when you're watching a train wreck or a car accident where it's just like, oh my god, that is horrifying. I mean, it's kind of like that, but the way it is, the way Steven Spielberg filmed it, it makes it so beautiful, if that makes any sense, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the story first of it. Most of this stuff is what really happened during the liquidation of the Jews from the ghettos of Poland, of Krakow. Some of that stuff is what really happened. I know Roman Polanski was supposed to direct this movie, or was asked by Steven Spielberg to direct this movie, but he refused because he was 8 years old when he escaped the Krakow ghettos during the liquidation where his mother was killed. She wasn't killed in the ghetto, she was actually killed later in Auschwitz. Stories like this is definitely one of the reasons why it is such an emotional movie, but it's also the way they portrayed the German soldiers persecuting the Jews. They herd them all onto the trains to the gassing chambers and tell them that they're going somewhere where they'll be safe, maybe. I don't necessarily know the whole history of that. All of the Jews have their luggage and stuff to the train station, and all the German soldiers are telling them to leave it there because it'll follow them.
Do not bring your baggage with you. It will follow you later.
But then later on, you see the Germans just dumping everything out, sorting it, picking it apart, taking the gold and the silver and melting it down, or using it to make themselves rich, taking the clothes and distributing them. Just all kinds of different things where they are looting and just basically stealing from these Jews that are being taken for slaughter, and it's just insane. And there's a couple scenes where you see once they are kind of in the concentration camps, or when they are heading to the concentration camps, they separate the families, they separate the males and the females, and it's so heartbreaking watching a husband and wife getting ripped apart from each other, parents, like a mother and a son. This era of world history has always been fascinating to me, and watching this, I think that's one of the reasons why I just couldn't tear my eyes away. It's because it's just why someone would want to do this to people. Why Hitler thought that it was a good idea to do this. Why, like, it boggles my mind, like, why he thought that he was so much better, even though I've heard a rumor that he was like half Jew, kind of the way, which this kind of makes a little bit of a full circle thing, but kind of the way Lord Voldemort in Harry Potter is half Muggle and he persecutes Muggles. And I mean, Ray Fiennes plays like the worst person in the world in this movie, so you know, full circle. And finally, one of the most heartbreaking things to me, and this is probably something that actually happened, I would not be surprised, when they are separating the sick and the healthy that are in the concentration camp, they are also herding the children onto trucks. All of the children that weren't able to hide, they were just herding them onto these trucks, and the kids were singing along with whatever song was playing. And they were happy and they were going along happily, and then they just start driving past all of their parents and just waving happily like, hey, look at us, we're going for a ride, not realizing that they're going to be killed. And you see the wave and shock and panic that is going over these parents' faces as they are trying to get to their kids, and it's just terrible. And now moving on from the more real life aspects of this, the story, to talk about what I believe makes this movie so powerful is all of the behind the scenes stuff, the cinematography, the editing, the colorization, and the actors. First, I'm going to be talking about probably what I feel is the most powerful reason why this movie is so moving is the colorization of this. Spielberg used the choice of filming in black and white to give it a more realistic feel, and it's true, it works. It makes it so much more realistic. He also used black and white as a way for it to kind of live on a little bit longer than having it just in color. I feel like it wouldn't have been as powerful in color because black and white, it just, in your mind, you think black and white and you just kind of think, there's a word for it, I feel like there's something about black and white that just makes it so powerful. For me, it was the contrast of color. The black and the white stood out from everything. The way they did the lighting with the color, it felt very noir in some scenes, especially when Schindler is talking to Helen in the wine cellar. There is just this light over her face that is so haunting when she's telling the story of Amon beating her that first night. But what's even more powerful is when it's wintertime, and actually pretty much anytime someone is killed in this, the blood is so contrasting to, especially in the wintertime, the snow. It makes it so visceral, and the terror is even more up close, especially since the kills are very close to you. Like, sometimes you are right there when the gun goes off. You see these people get shot in the head, and that makes it just even more terrifying when you see just the darkness of the blood pouring out over the snow or the cobblestone streets. It gives it this really raw and realistic feel. And the way Spielberg told a lot of this story, cinematography and editing wise, was very interesting to me, especially the scenes leading up to where Schindler and Amon first meet. You see them doing their morning routines, shaving their faces, getting ready, and Amon is on the left side of the screen and Schindler is on the right side of the screen, and they're kind of mirroring each other, and whenever they are talking, they are they're in the same, they're always in Amon on the left and Schindler on the right. And I just feel like that's a very subtle touch and a very interesting way of framing it. I don't know what it means, but it's something I noticed, and I really enjoyed that because it shows that they are facing off against each other throughout this whole movie. Even though they become friends, it is always Schindler against Amon, trying to win or trying to protect his workforce. There was also this sequence that I absolutely adored with the editing, the way they cut between very contrasting emotions. There was this big wedding, a party in honor of Schindler, and then you see Amon beating Helen, and all three of these combined together is just so many different emotions, and the way the cameras move and the way they are cut, they get faster, the beats get faster and faster and faster, and it's just intense, and it just pulls your heart in so many different directions, makes it even more emotional. And overall, throughout the entire film, the cinematography and the editing mixed together create this Pavlovian fear within the viewer that you just are constantly on the edge of anticipating something bad happening. For me, it really did not hit me until the scene where Schindler makes his list and he starts pulling all of the workers that he wants to save to the trains. The men in one train and the women in another train. And the men arrive safely to the factory to start making their gun shells, while the women are taken to Auschwitz to be gassed. But the way they shoot and edit this is so intense, and you are just on the edge of your seat. Even with the men, when it was filmed slightly more jovially, they're happy, they're joking around, they know they're going somewhere safe. You can feel that, but at the same time, I was still anticipating something horrible happening. Whereas when you see the women's train cars, you just feel this even more intense. I don't know if it's just like women's intuition. Some of the women are joking about making food and being happy and eating, while some of the other women are looking outside of the window and they see a little German boy, and the feeling of tension builds even more until you finally reach this point where something is going to happen, but then they get saved. And finally, to wrap this up, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the more principal cast, starting with Ben Kingsley and Ray Fiennes. Ben Kingsley, for me, was the standout in this. He has said in interviews years after this movie was made that Spielberg told him his character was a witness in this film. He was the witness in this film, and you feel that. You feel like you're going through this a lot through his eyes, because he's kind of the one being the moral compass guiding Schindler through this, and he's just the silent right-hand man to him. The scene that really got me, and oh my god, I'm gonna start tearing up just thinking about it, is when they are saying goodbye before they start making the list, before Schindler gets the idea to buy all of his workers back from Amon. You see this single tear slowly roll down Ben Kingsley's face. It just hurt so bad, and I think that's when I started crying and was crying through the rest of the, I think it was maybe an hour left of the movie at that point. It was just heartbreaking for me. And Ray Fiennes was, whoa, like, he was amazing and intense. He is so good at playing just such horrible people, and you can't do anything but hate him. Even when he has this moment, he had a talk with Schindler and he's starting to like forgive and pardon people and not just execute them, and then it just suddenly goes away, which that scene was a little bit weird to me because I was just like, why is he pardoning them? But at the same time, it just felt a little bit like what his character would do, because he looks up to Schindler so much. He wanted to be like him, but then he realized, that's not me, I want to be my own person, and goes back to killing people. And finally, Liam Neeson as Oscar Schindler. His performance was amazing. The way he was introduced to the film, it's like one of the greatest character introductions I feel like I've seen in a while. You don't see him, you see him from the back or you see him from the profile, and he's this very mysterious figure, especially when getting in good with some of the German officers and using those connections and being very personable to make his business even more profitable and to gain some political power, so he can get his pots and pans kind of really like into the army and bought for a really great price so he can become even more rich. And he uses this power and this manipulation of people in such a great way later throughout this movie, especially when he is trying to get his workforce back. And even though this is really a story about redemption and Schindler coming around as a great humanitarian in the end, he was still such a horrible person. He was kind of a sleazeball, especially towards the beginning of the movie. He hired a bunch of secretaries. He only hired them because they were really good-looking women. He even had affairs with them. And from what I have read in my research, the real-life Oscar Schindler still did this even when his wife Emily came back to help him when they had their new factory. And he wasn't the greatest guy of all time, and I feel like if they had put that into the movie, it would have just made it a lot more messy, and it wouldn't have given him the great redemption story and emotional high that you feel at the end because of the amazing, wonderful thing that he did for saving 1,100 Polish Jewish people. It's insane. But again, he is the titular character, so he has to have some nice rounded story arc and be a good person in the end. And now for the clip. I feel like there is really only one clip I could have used from all of the amazing scenes that are in this, because it is such a powerfully moving moment, and it is also something that is used later on in the film. Both of these times that this moment is used, it symbolizes a really big turning point in Oscar Schindler's life. And that is all I have for Schindler's List. As always, these are just my opinions, but I'd love to know yours in the comments down below. Let me know what you liked or disliked about Schindler's List if you have seen it. Let me know your favorite Steven Spielberg movie. I know mine's probably Jurassic Park, as is a lot of people's, but I would still love to know in the comments down below. If you want to know which films I have watched so far, or just keep up with my progress in general, there's a link in the description where you can see every single movie I have checked off the list so far. And after watching this really sad movie, I'm gonna need a little bit of a pick-me-up before getting into some Oscar season stuff. So the next couple movies will be comedies, and the first one I will be checking off is the Marx Brothers in Duck Soup. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really truly do appreciate every single one of you. Let me know who you are in the comments down below, and let's be friends. If you enjoyed this, leave a like and subscribe if you're new, because I love talking all things movies, TV shows, filmmaking, film history, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye!